Hello everyone. This video is a quick and brief walkthrough for the VSAN config, which I would be using in my home lab for integrating this with NSX Cross vCenter setup. Everything which I'm running here is in my home lab, and I would try to put in a separate blog post for covering up VSAN design and best practice guides, and maybe cover up much more details in the home lab. So let's get started. I had listed down the high-level steps which we require, and we will be going through each one of those in this video. So let's go to the lab. So here is my lab. This is one of my sites. This is site B for my NSX Cross vCenter setup. I had already configured. Let me show you the site here. So this is my site here, with 3 ESX hosts in the compute and 3 in the management. I had actually purposely configured 3 hosts in each cluster because for vSAN you either require at least 2 ESX hosts with a vSAN witness server, or what you can do is you can have 3 ESX hosts. So I didn't want to install another appliance or server for monitoring the vSAN. So I installed these 3 ESX hosts in the site A in compute and 3 in the management cluster. We have exactly same config in the site B. This is the management cluster, and I think it should not be in maintenance mode. Let me refresh the browser. Okay, yeah, that's it. So I had also configured this site with the management cluster with 3 hosts, and oh, I should have actually shut down my Facebook. That's okay. Let's keep on going. So this management host again has 3 management cluster again has 3 hosts, and vSAN is already configured. As you see on the right side pane, you have this management disk groups configured. So the only cluster which is left to configure is the compute cluster in site B. And one thing to note here is we cannot configure or manage vSAN with the vSphere client. We have to do it with the web client, and hence I'm using the web client to configure everything. So the another thing is you cannot you can, but the ideal way is to add the host to the vCenter as a standalone item first, and once you do that, create a cluster, and then enable the cluster for the vSAN, and add the host to the vSAN enabled cluster, and then move on to configure this management. So let's create the new cluster, which should be configured as a vSAN, and I would be using disk assignment policy as manual. I would not be using automatic because I want to create 2 different disk groups for my vSAN, and I want to control which disk goes into it. So let's change it to manual. The vSphere HNDRs, I will keep them disabled for now, and I will be enabling it after configuring the vSAN cluster. Okay, the cluster name should be compute_B. B is for the site B, and this is the first cluster for compute. Okay, so once you have done this, I generally prefer to configure my ESXi host related stuff in the maintenance mode, and then move them across out of the maintenance mode. So the next step here is we have to actually configure the VM kernel NIC. So I will show you one host, and then I will pause the video and configure the other hosts. So go into the go into the vCenter inventory in host and clusters, click the host, go to the manage tab, go to the networking vSwitch, and add a new vSwitch and a new VM kernel interface into it. So let's create a new vSwitch, add a single adapter. Ideally, for best practice and the production environment, you should always have redundancy. However, here this is the home lab, so I'm just using one VM NIC into it. Okay, let's move on. Let me give it named as vSAN VMK. Another thing here is you can actually use different TCP stack, maybe vMotion, or you can also use default. Since this is my Again, home lab, I'm using default TCP stack, and I'm enabling vMotion as well as VSAN traffic on the same VMK NIC. The only reason is I wanted to keep vSAN and vMotion on one VMK NIC is I wanted to keep storage related functions together. When we do a vMotion, again the memory, host memory related stuffs are being copied between the a VM memory related stuffs are being copied between the host. So I wanted to keep it this way. It's up to you. You can create another vMotion VMK NIC, but I'm using it as one. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so my IP it should be 172.17.10 dot. This is compute, so it should be 21.255.255.255.0. The IP is already in use. 21. This is compute. Sorry, this 10 is my management. The vSAN subnet is 30.21. Another point to be noted here is your vSAN VMK NIC should have multicast supported at the upstream switches. This is required. This is one of the prerequisites for the support for the upstream switches. Okay, we can go into much more detail about the multicast requirement in my vSAN blog, which I will be doing in some time. Let's move on and let's finish. I will give a video a pause, and I will configure the other two hosts, and then we will come back to the video and move on to the next step. Okay, I'm done with the VMK config for the vSAN. So my compute 03 host is having 23 IP, and compute 02 is 22, and compute 01 is 21. So all three hosts are actually in the same subnet for the vSAN VMK. Let's go and add these hosts to the compute cluster, which is already enabled for the vSAN. Okay, once we do that, you can have a look at the recent task. Let's log in. Recent task is here. So it's trying to send the vSAN web, as well as I wanted to discuss about the health web, vSAN health check web. It's actually a plugin being integrated already into the vSphere 6 environment. However, if you're running vSphere 5.5, you might have to add this plugin, and this needs to be done manually. There are a lot of videos. I will try to cover this up again in my vSAN blog. But as of now, what you can do is in my environment I am using 6.0 vSphere, vCenter 6.0 update 2, and ESXi 6.0 update 2. So I don't need to actually install the vSAN health check plugin. Okay, so let's add the other host and the last one as well. If we have a look at the recent task, we can see all of them have been completed successfully with no errors. Okay, let's go back. Sorry guys, it's one of my family member might be sneezing. Okay, so let's go back to the compute, go to the manage, go to the virtual SAN general settings. It says disk, add this to the storage policy as manual. Okay, let's go to disk management. No disk are being associated as of now. Let's go to health and performance. It says enabled. Sometimes what happens is it says enabled, but it needs a ESXi host reboot. Sometimes the health check plugin do not get pushed in, and you have to actually reboot it. So in my case it is working for as of now. So let's go back to disk management. You can now either create a disk group manually by clicking on this particular option of creating a new disk group and adding in the required disks. However, there's another option wherein you can add the disk groups to the entire cluster here, all these three hosts. The first option is actually giving you a possibility of adding a disk group per host, and the second option which I'm going to use, it's giving you an option to add disk groups to the entire cluster. So let's go to the host model. Maybe let me first choose the disk model and size, and then this one is 7 GB. No, I want to use this one first. Let me disable this, do not claim, and enable this as cache tier. You need to have minimum one SSD drive and a minimum one HDD or another SSD drive as in a disk group. The first SSD drive will have to actually work as a cache tier, and the another disk, which could be a SSD or an HDD, should be configured as a capacity tier. So I'm going to use this now. This one is 25. Let's not use this. Let's use this 35 GB capacity tier. So once I do that, I actually do a verification as well. So what I will do is I'll go to the host. I will verify against each usable item what are the capacities, and they should be same. 7 and 35, 7 and 35, and 7 and 35. That looks good. I will click OK, and it will start pushing this configuration. Okay, let's go to the recent task and have a look what's happening here. So it's done. My disk group has been created. I wanted to show you something here. Let's first go back to the storage and see. You can actually see two vCenter data store. The first one was created for the management cluster, and the second one is created for the compute cluster. Let's look at the capacity for this data store. Just have a look at this. It's 103 right now, and record this number. I wanted to show you something. Let's go back now to the clusters, and I will create another disk group by choosing the claim disk option. And this is my flash. Let's configure as cache tier. This is my capacity tier, and let's go and click OK. Okay, let's go and see the recent task. So it's still working out for one of my hosts. It just completed. Okay, so let's go back. Let me show you something here. Now I have two disk groups for each host. This is for host number 2, and now host number 3 is again two disk groups. And let's go back to the storage option, data stores, and see the capacity. So why I wanted to show you this particular numbers are when you create multiple disk groups, it doesn't create multiple data stores. A single data store is actually created by default for one cluster, and if you add in more disk groups, it will add in the capacity to the data store. It will not create different data stores. So that was the whole idea of showing you this number here. Okay, let's go back now. So in this compute cluster, let's go to health performance. Again, it's enabled, and I've enabled it for 60 minutes. Let me go back to the monitor tab and just ignore all this stuff because I'm using it's in my home lab, and it's actually asking me to check for the hardware compatibility of the controllers and all the stuff. So let's go to the VSAN tab here, physical disk, and let's go to the health status. Okay, again, this is hardware compatibility, and I will just ignore it. Physical disk, and it should show me something here like health status. Okay, so here it is. It shows me as healthy. Everything is actually healthy. So this is pretty much about the vSAN creation. And again, for your health status plugin, make sure if you're running 5.5 environment, you have to download the plugin from VMware's website, and you have to integrate it with your environment. And if you're running vSphere 6.0, you do not really need that plugin. It's built in. You do not have to download it. The web is actually within the package view when you install the vSphere 6.0 environment. Okay, let's take out these hosts out of maintenance mode, and then we will move on to our Cross vCenter setup. Okay, thank you guys for watching the video.